Hello and welcome to the Real Sports CSGO podcast. This is your host, Ezekiel Carcelo. And before we start the podcast today, I just want to mention one of our great partners in Podcast Republic. You might have an app already for podcasts, listening to podcasts, might use your website, Reddit, whatever. But we think a great experience for you, along with too many people who already agree, is Podcast Republic. You can find their app on the Play Store or the Google Play Store or iOS App Store. It's a great app, a lot of cool features for downloading apps, and podcasts, including ours. The best one, of course, on the store. Now, and today we have a great treat for everyone here. We are being featuring, of course, our two usuals, Mygind and Mist, but we also have the Danish wonder boy of casting himself, On Fire Anders. I want to thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. So today we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, unfortunately. And the first one up, of course, is SK Gaming winning Adrenaline Cyber League, the most Tier 1 of Tier 1 tournaments. Of course, beating Vanguard 3-1 in the Grand Finals. Now, Mist, how do we feel about SK Gaming winning their first tournament of the year?
To me, it was kind of a lackluster land, but like you saw, like Virtus Pro get knocked off by Vanguard, which I thought they played great. But SK winning was kind of expected when they played the Vanguard in the final. I thought the Vanguard showed some promise in that event, but I guess you can build off this for SK. They're doing pretty good in Starladder now, so we'll see.
For sure. So, Anders, when you, I don't know if you watched the finals or not, but SK had a bad first map, and they pretty much cleaned it up on the other maps. How do you feel about their performance at Adrenaline Cyber League versus some of the other performances like EPL in Dallas?
I mean, I think it's good news for the SK lineup that they're able to pick up that win, but unfortunately, it also becomes a bit of a it sort of says something about what we're measuring the SK lineup with right now, that they're able to beat Vanguard. Not to take anything from those guys, but you kind of want SK, especially with Stewie as the pickup, to be able to smash a tournament like that. So I don't know. I guess it's all right. I hope they can use the momentum to build something forward, but I'm not 100% sure it's worth celebrating for very long.
For sure, yeah. Mygind, how do you feel about that? Because I think SK looked pretty good, but it's a smaller tournament. They only played 2 matches, best of 3 and a best of 5. So, how do you feel about the relevancy of the event?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that I've noticed about SK. So the first thing is that ever since Coldzera started calling, I think he has improved individually, which is a good sign. But then the other thing is their map pool is super weird. So there was these news, I think it was during EPL, that Fallen is still calling on, I think it was Cash and Inferno. And those have been their strongest maps. They're up and down on Cash, but Inferno is definitely up there. And then today, Stewie tweeted that he's now calling on Mirage. So this whole Coldzera calling experiment, I don't know if that's been dropped already, or if they only have him calling on some maps, or if they are just gonna end up dropping it all together, if it's just to give Fallen a break. But so far, it's there's some positive signs out of it, but it's not. I don't think it's gonna be good in the long run.
A lot of them have in-game lead before. I think 4 of them have for the teams like Boltstead and Immortal. So I don't know if they're gonna do map specific IGLs, but I can't see that working.
That would be a crazy experiment, wouldn't it? I mean, God help Virtus Pro if they would figure out the idea of changing in-game leaders per map. That's going to be awful.
I feel you should have to have consistency. Fallen was the IGL for so long. I feel having someone like Stu, even if he IGL, it'd be odd because he speaks English. I guess they kind of think in Brazilian, so that'd be kind of weird. And then you have Fallen. He kind of IGLs kind of doesn't. When SK loses 16-1 recently in Star Series to, I believe it was VG Flash. Yeah, that's just ugly. You just can't do stuff like that. It's just bad. So I think they definitely need to work on a lot of things in terms of consistency. That's what it's all about in terms of maintaining greatness. Something that they used to do.
I mean, don't know about the rest of you guys, but I feel like Fallen has sort of accumulated so much credit over the years that I feel like Like, it's going to take a lot of losses in a row before I start to feel like this project is out of control. Like, maybe that's just me being very faithful, but I just have this feeling that, like, he's always somehow seems to know what he's doing. So I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt for a while to come still.
Yeah, I think one thing that is noticeable about that is that Fallen individually is terrible right now compared to what he's been in the past. I mean, last year he was a top 10 player, and the year before he was a top 10 player too. And now he's just like nowhere near that level. So I don't know, like you're saying, that he's built up so much credit that it's not going to really matter how bad he's playing individually if like they're never going to kick him probably.
Yeah. I mean, how would it would be a crazy idea, wouldn't it? Like, there's obviously a point where I think they would have to come out themselves eventually and say this, for whatever reason, is not working. You know, it's an experiment and it didn't really pan out. But you know, I feel like he's made these calls before where they've made changes, even when it seemed like they were in good form and things were all right. They made changes and then it turned out they somehow got better. And I don't know. I want to give it a little while before I start getting too panicked over the whole situation. But I mean, yeah, I guess we'll see for SLTV how well they do here.
I agree with that. Issue is like when you're at such a high level, like you expect a lot of a player, but like at this individual, like he's had a lot of red on HLTV in terms of like individual performances against like even teams like Renegades, or of course teams against Astralis and FaZe. He's really struggled. But even against teams like a Vanguard or Flash or teams that or Greyhound, you expect him to do really well as an opper. He hasn't been like a device or anything where he's like really good, really consistent. He just feels like something's off. I don't know what it is. So it's just like one of those things where they're like the answer is so close, but it's just so far. Like you want him to be good again, and he should be able to be good again. There's nothing should be wrong, but right now he's having some trouble. But we'll see. Like you said, with Starladder 2-0 so far. So I think that's a really positive sign for SK Gaming.
For sure.
Another positive sign for another team might be, well, actually, not a positive sign, but Virtus Pro losing at Vanguard to Vanguard ACL, and now they're currently 1-1 in Starladder. So, how do we feel about Virtus Pro considering they're once at the top of the ladder in terms of Counter-Strike? I remember watching E-League, and then they lost to Astralis, and they had, it's the VP/Astralis era. And then now it's been a long time since then, and you have Posh. No one's consistent. I think that's the biggest argument. No one's been consistent in the team. How do you feel about Virtus Pro being like? Should they be a team still, or should they just disband and like? Should Ego be the new like top tier of Polish Counter-Strike?
So for me, the question I would ask everyone here right now is, who's the best player on Virtus Pro?
I don't have one. It's inconsistent.
Yeah, so that's kind of the problem, because like one game you have Pasha playing like he gets 10 kills, and then the next game he gets 30 kills, and it's the same for like everyone. So everyone thought that Mishu was gonna come in and be the savior, and he had that one really good tournament when he first came in, and then since then he has cooled off as well. So like there's just no one they can go to. They don't have like back in the day you could always rely on Snacks to be the star of the team and really play well in most of the games, and now there's just no one. So I don't know if we're looking at a second change, because we see AGO here at Star Series playing super well. So I don't know what you guys think about that.
I think like for AGO or for VP looking at, you have to see like players on AGO like Snatchy and like PHR today was insane. So like they said they were gonna remove Neo. I'm pretty sure they said in that report if things weren't going well.
Yeah,
he hasn't been playing well at all. So I looked to Snatchy. He's been impressing me a lot lately. But like I don't know what else you have to do. Nothing's working.
Yeah, Statue's playing really well, and I mean, I don't know. AGO is obviously impressive right now. I think I mean, that's true. It's a good question to ask. I think the one about who's the best on Virtus Pro right now. I think if you look at instead of performance, if you looked at like theoretically or like potentially who could be the best player, I think you still have to say Snacks. But the fact that he's not playing at that level consistently is obviously a symptom that there's something else going on in that team that has not been solved or can't be solved, or they need to use different kinds of measures to try and solve it. I just don't know what it is. Like they don't even seem confident in the interviews. Like we talked about this throughout the day, today and yesterday, that when they get interviewed, they don't even seem like they really sort of like believe in it. They're just like, it's a bit of a struggle right now, not looking too good, a little bit. they look stressed as well on the stage. I don't know. I am getting just a little bit worried for Virtus Pro. I've got to say.
Pash is tweeting after every tournament that he's gonna retire, so that's a very sign in itself.
I mean, can you blame him though? I mean, he's got a lot. I'm sure he made a lot of money since he's first been playing for a while, right? He's won some big events, been to some grand finals and some majors, won one. So I think if he retired and you just saw Virtus Pro in terms of like just collapse their CS division, and what I can understand, because Polish CS has not been consistent at all in terms of producing 3 teams like Denmark or Sweden or even NA at sometimes. So I think Polish Counter-Strike's kind of in a weird spot right now. You have AGO, you have Kingwin kind of technically is coming back, VP's somewhere doing something. So it's really hard to work it out. I feel like they could maybe involve some international free agents, make the scene better, but I don't think that's going to happen with like the culture. So it's a really interesting scene. I don't know how it's going to work out in the next 6 months, though.
It's also kind of a thing where Virtus Pro haven't, like over the years, they haven't included any new talent in their team, and then they just sort of ended up in this situation where there's like, you don't really know who's the next star in Poland. You don't really know who's the up-and-coming in-game leader. And so these players have just like been switching around for years and years, and now we're finally starting to see AGO coming up and showing that there's some more talent in Poland that they could be looking at.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting part for me is, I mean, you always had to assume to a certain extent, I think, that the inspirational model that Virtus Pro was putting on was going to be, something that would lead more Polish players to play the game and become good at it. But then it also kind of felt like maybe they had like a lock on everything, like that you couldn't, there's no way you were ever going to get any light shine on you because you'd always be in the shadow of Virtus Pro, right? And now maybe that's not true. Maybe what we're discovering is that there actually have been a lot of, young Polish kids out there that have said, I want to be the next Pasher. And, now that the top of the mountain has started to come down a little bit, we can maybe start to see some of it. That'd be interesting.
I mean, that is true. That's one mountain's falling down, but other mountain that seems to be in flux would be Fnatic, as we've seen the Swedish, I guess the number 1 Swedish team right now. They've benched Lekro, one of Tony's favorite players, and they've added Exist, who has been, he was pretty good at FaZe, I guess, especially on Cash. But do we think that Exist is the right player to add to Fnatic, yes or no?
I don't think so. I mean, like, I don't see a reason why they would kick Lekro besides internal issues would be the thing I can assume, because he was the second best player in my opinion. And adding Exist, you're making gold in their entry, and he has not proven he can frag really at all yet. So it'd be it's going to be interesting. I just don't think it's a good roster move in general.
Yeah, so the thing I would say there is like, when you have a team, you kind of want the right mix of aggressive and passive players. So before you had Crims and Flusher, who are passive players, and you have JW and Lekro, who are more aggressive players. But now they've sort of messed it up by like adding a passive player in Exist and then getting rid of an aggressive player in Lekro, and then they're kind of gonna force Golden to be an aggressive player, and I just don't really see how that's gonna work out. And then on top of it, you have this whole situation where they've talked about in the past, when they got rid of Olofmeister, how they wanted to play this really tactical style, and now you're adding Exist, whose like in-game leading style is the complete opposite of that. So I just don't really understand the logic. So I don't know if you have some insight, Anders, that can help us understand this.
I wish I did. I mean, that'd be the best moment, wouldn't it? I share some of those concerns as well. Like, there's also a general, I think, Swedish problem when it comes to like a bunch of the Swedish teams, which is that they're just all very Swedish. Like, they're so quiet. Like, they don't have the same explosive, but you don't have to be like some sort of out of control, explosive personality person that can sort of revive the whole team when they're down. But you'd be good to have someone who could bring a bit of energy. And Exist in some ways, I think, it's like the sort of the opposite. Like, he's from all the way up north in Sweden, where they don't even talk at all. So it's like a strange situation, in my opinion. I'm not like, I think there's something weird that's going on here, and I can't exactly put my finger on it. I also think that we have maybe a twisted view of what Exist is like as an in-game leader, in the sense that when he was actually doing the in-game leading for NIP in the beginning is when they were essentially untouchable. Like, you could have had anybody in-game lead for that team and they would have still won, just because Forrest and Get Right and Exist and everybody else was so good, you know. So I kind of wonder, like, I'm not sure if we can match that standard to today's standard and say that he's still going to be doing, you know, like the same job, or if like it's just unclear to me how this is going to play out. I don't know. I'm not sure I'm a big fan of it, actually. If I have to be honest, I feel like I kind of like Lecro's style, and I don't know. Exist did play well in his short time and phase, though. If you have to give him that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, I think Lecro was just a really good player. I just don't see what Exist adds. I know Fnatic have been like, oh, we want Exist in the team, but I don't really see like what difference he adds to it, except bad picks and bans. Maybe they're better on cash. I don't really understand what Exist is really going to add to this team in terms of like being a tactical team.
There may be a slight bit of insight. I think all the way back at the dawn of Global Offensive, Exist was going to be on the Fnatic Global Offensive team when they swapped over from 1.6, and I think Nip kind of stole him in the beginning. And I seem to remember Khan being not very happy about that whole situation. So I'm kind of wondering if this is like it's hard to imagine that the whole organization would keep the dream alive of getting Exist back somehow, but I'm sort of wondering if there's some sort of thing that, like, you know, even now, just like 6 years on, they're like, maybe we could get that dream back somehow, you know? Right. There's some historical narrative there that might be interesting to explore a little bit more. Maybe we could get a chance to talk with Khan at some point and see if it's, you know, his long lost love that has returned.
That's a long time to hold a grudge over that.
Yes, yeah. It really.
Sweden, what do you expect, though?
Yes.
Anything can happen.
Sweden does like to live in 2012, to be fair.
Yeah, if only.
One person not living in the past, though, or one team at least, is Gambit. We see them replacing Seized, and they're going to add Mur. And I think a lot of, Seized wasn't even bad as an in-game leader recently. He did say he was an IGL like Zeus, which I thought was an interesting statement right before they played Na'Vi and then got crushed 2-0 by Na'Vi. So that was an interesting one. But in the statement, I believe C said that they were saying, oh, you're too complex. I don't like these strategies. And then, now he's gone. Now they're adding Mur, someone who can't IGL. So how do we feel about Mur and Gambit, especially with Gambit having some shaky results as of late?
I mean, first of all, it doesn't really solve the main issue that Gambit has, which is just the in-game leading issue. But I did say last week that if they weren't going to solve that issue, at least like make a sort of phase-like roster where you just fill them up with firepower and then see what you can do there. Because what they're doing currently, or what they did before, I guess, that's not really working. So I think it's an upgrade, but like, you still haven't solved the in-game leading issue, and in fact, it looks like they've kind of made it worse, because I actually thought Cease did all right for that tournament where they let him in-game lead, and now they've like returned it back to Dosia, which I don't know the guy personally, okay, but like he doesn't seem like an in-game leader to me, just watching from the outside.
Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, okay, I don't want to be rude, but like he just doesn't seem like the most cerebral player. That's like, just look at his play style. It's like he's had the same play style since 2012, where he holds in that shift key, he walks in apartments on Inferno, or like on Ivy on train, or wherever he walks, and he just walks and walks, and he doesn't change it. And I don't know, I just don't get. Dosia just doesn't scream smart player to me. Let me put it that way.
Got some profile here. I mean, I don't know if I can. It's kind of harsh, to be honest. But I mean, I understand what you're saying though. Like issue with comparison to FaZe though. Like FaZe has Kerrigan, a proven IGL. I mean, he might have had a history of choking, And he still kind of does with FaZe. But, I mean, they have won a lot of events, and he's a smart player. He's a tactical IGL, whereas, well, loose-ish, I guess you'd say. But whereas Gambit doesn't have an IGL like they used to have with Zeus. And I think they're better on that structure system with Zeus when they won the major versus now where they have either top 4, where I think it was top 4, top 8 at Marseille, and then down to the lows of, more recent times being 0-2 at Starladder.
I mean, to a certain extent, it depends on. I think it depends on what your time, what the scale of the time you want this to work in. If you're Gambit and you're thinking, could we make Hobbit or Adren or Dozier or someone the in-game leader and then win the next major? If that's the goal, then definitely no. I just don't see any way in which that's going to happen. But there's no reason you can't adopt like a longer scope than that and say we're going to spend from now until the end of the year building one of our guys as an in-game leader and maybe someone as like a support leader, someone who can help out, so that it's not just all on one person, but that can sort of help to do some of the hard research and understand how the other teams play. And then you hope to come out at the end of the year with someone who is actually capable of doing it. I think the problem is if you just appoint somebody the in-game leader and then hope the next tournament is going to work out well because that guy's going to be good at leading, it's like that. In-game leading isn't a skill you can pick up in the space of like 2 months. It's just not possible. So I think if the whole team is willing to accept that it will take that time, then there's a chance it could work. If they hope that it's going to be the magic cure and then they'll do really well, I just think it isn't not even worth trying. Then you should look for an in-game leader that can come in and do that job. Like then there's no other way, I think.
That's the problem. Like they switched to like the Hobbit to Adren to Doja, and sees like IGL in the span like a couple months. It seems like they're only going for like short-term results, and it's obviously not working. So they just keep flipping around.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that tends to happen because it's frustrating, right? And you probably, I imagine, as Gambit or any other team, you feel like you have an obligation to do well. Like you can't have 3 tournaments in a row where things aren't going well. Then people start to get upset. But there's 20 tournaments in a year, so if you don't do so well for 3 or 4 of them, that's fine. If everyone accepts it, I think it's just about being on the same page for that kind of play. It's possible, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely is possible, I think. But Gambit, I mean, their fan base hasn't been too, I guess, aggressive considering they don't have a big history of winning events like a SK or a Fnatic or like NiP even, or of course FaZe. Like they don't have they're not used to success in a way. So I guess if they're kind of mediocre right now, I don't think it should matter too much. But definitely think they should be, because they have a lot of potential to be the best CIS team. For sure, with Navi outside of Simple and Electronic being So I definitely think there's a lot of room to improve.
Yeah, I will say this just as a last comment. I think Mir is amazing. I really, really like his style. I think I'm actually really happy that Gambit picked him up. I think it's a great idea. I hope they keep him as well.
Yeah, I definitely think he's a good talent. We've always been big fans of him on the podcast, so I don't think he's definitely a bad pickup. It's just, I guess, in terms of picking up what you need versus what you want, I guess would be the complaint some might have, which I can understand. But one person who
Gambit, I'm also sorry.
Wow, that hurts, man. It hurts.
I was gonna say something.
You can go.
I was gonna say, if you're Gambit, you're looking from the outside. You gotta look at like a Vanguard and see what they're doing. They're been on the rise recently. They're impressing me a lot too. Yeah, Buster and Jame and Quicker.
Yeah, I guess you can say a Vanguard or even individuals from Quantum, Bellator, Fire, or other of these teams that have come up and down. Considering they still have a major, they still have a legend status and a major somehow. But yeah, I guess you can understand that. But I don't know who Vanguard's IGL really is. I think Jame was at one point. I'm not too sure.
I think he still is, but
okay, maybe.
There's nothing from these up-and-coming CIS teams that screams like smart cerebral in-game leading to me, so I'm not really sure who's going to be the choice there.
I mean, I guess
I mean, I agree with that actually, but I think you don't have to. I think to the style of in-game leader that we all seem to be talking about is to try and become, Carrigan or Fallen level or something, which is I mean that there aren't that many people out there, and they've been at it for a long time. But I think what Quantum, Bellator, Fire, and Avantgarde have shown is that if you just understand the basics of the game well enough and like the whole team is in on it, then that's enough. Like that can carry you so long. Maybe it'll be a while before you take on Astralis, but that can't possibly be the team goal to say that's what we want to do in the next 3 months. We just want to beat Astralis, you know. That's a silly goal to have. So I don't know. I think those teams are good models in the sense that they kind of do prove that if you get the basics down really solid and you have decent players, then that'll take you a fair distance.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's about what I would say. Like, I mean, you don't have to have a smart and cerebral player like a Blade, someone who's like really falling. He just forgot how to frag, and so he's become irrelevant now. So I think you don't have to have somebody super smart, just somebody that can make good calls and like confident ones, so that you can, you know, have good T sides, decent CT sides. You can let your individual players kind of carry. So I think that's kind of more the CI style, anyways. With people like Simple, like, you have players that are really good individually that can carry a team. So I think that's still possible. And of course, it works for Navi. So I mean, why can't it work for Gambit, right? But one team that really didn't work out was G2 Esports, and so we saw Mixwell now, free agent, the beloved Spaniard of North American fame. We've questioned a lot whether he should either stay in the French scene, maybe. I don't really know what the French scene is going to be doing with LDLC or Envious, but
nobody should stay in the French scene.
I mean, that's a great. I mean, but somehow, for whatever reason, Major wants to get back in. I don't know why. Maybe to ruin another team. I don't know. But we've argued he should go Baby Mac to his old buddies in Tarek and Rush and replace Kadoodle, who might be on the way out, considering FNS was just recently cut after the big buyout. So how do we feel about Mixwell's chances of landing on an NA team, staying in the French scene, or going international?
So if we look at Mixwell's options, NA is obviously one of the big ones because he's played there before. But like, I think we saw that he had the homesickness and he didn't really enjoy playing in NA from what I've seen in interviews and stuff like that. So maybe we should kind of be looking at European international teams because, like Anders said, no one should stay in the French team. So those are kind of his options. And if we look at those, I mean, I don't think Mousesports or FaZe are going to be looking for a new player anytime soon. So then you need to look at the next team, which is probably Hell Racers.
Or Tempo Storm.
Or Tempo Storm, yeah. That's the other one. So
Get back banned.
yeah, let's not go there. But like, one of those two teams is perhaps where he should end up. I mean, Tempo Storm hasn't really done anything yet, but like, I could see him on a Hell Racers maybe, if like maybe instead of like a Dead Fox who has been criticized a lot. I mean, they don't really play the same role, but like I could see them switching it around a bit and stacking a bit more skill in there.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I don't think there's anything Mixwell can't do in the game. So just give him anything, he'll probably make it work. I think he should get out of the French scene. I think that's priority number one. There are obviously a lot of people now that have gone through this process of moving to America and then discovering that they're not really loving it all that much. I personally don't really get it. I think America is great, but if you don't find yourself at home, then obviously you're not going to be able to sustain a professional career in any meaningful sense if you don't really feel like you're doing it. Yeah, I mean the whole European or international mixed team concept, I think, has kind of been validated. Like, it is obviously not easy to make all the pieces fit, but you could probably find enough loose agents and stuff like that are willing to give it a try. And some organization that'll pay you money to play. I think that's not such a bad idea.
I agree with that. I think Hellraiser would be a good fit, considering they've had decent results, but they never had like eye-popping results yet. So I think replacing Botfox, who was a former primary opper and then became a rifler, much like Mixwell is, where he was a primary opper, now he wants to be a rifler / hybrid player. I think that'd be a good fit for him, even if Fox is more of a support player. I think Mixwell can play a sort of like a fluid role in that kind of team because you have other good players like Issa, Woxic. I mean, it's a really stacked. With Mixwell, it could be a stacked team, and definitely could become like more of a top team. And I mean, I don't think that you could really say I don't know where else he would go. I mean, you mentioned Tempo Storm, but I don't know if you would want to downgrade Tempo Storm like that. So
I just know he's friends. Yeah, I just know he's friends with Lol and their coach, but he's not there anymore. But it could I don't know. That team has potential on paper, in my opinion, but we haven't seen much
that's true.
of anything really yet. So
he goes to Dignitas. That's always an option, I'm sure.
Oh
the
my
number one
God.
team in the NA scene. Sorry.
Maybe they
had to
could
do
make
it.
a European team again. That went really
Oh,
well.
that did go really well. Unfortunately, it's not well anymore. But one player who I think is feeling the same kind of blues is FNS, who's recently gone inactive after a reported $200,000 buyout, which some people are saying the numbers are not entirely the real, shows the whole story of how much he actually is worth. FNS is no longer going to be with Cloud9 after ECS London. How do we feel about FNS's chances of either going where he's going to go after this, with Tarek being the new IGL?
Well, I mean, he did say in his statement that he was going to go inactive for a while, but I don't know how accurate that sort of is. So, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing I will say is, like, if you're going to bring in FNS, at least give him the time and space to make the changes that he wants to. It seemed like they gave up really, really fast on, like, creating new tactics and letting him, really put his mark on the Cloud9 team, because it seemed like they just kind of continued a bit with their old tactics and then just like, oh, we put FNS in there, and then it's just like a worse version of the old team. So, yeah, I feel like if you're going to bring in FNS, I mean, you should bring in FNS. I mean, bring him in properly and like allow him to like take over the team instead of just like replacing him a few months later. And then like, there's other problems in this team as well. I mean, it's not like you can just say, oh, FNS did really badly and he was the problem the whole time. I mean, there's people like Rush and Skadoodle who said, oh, we're going to step up when FNS comes in. And Rush was saying, oh, I fit really well into FNS's system. And then he's just playing the same that he has been in Cloud9 the whole time. So, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's the same conversation that we were just having about Gambit and having an in-game leader, and whether or not you try and adopt for the long term or for the short term, right? And I kind of agree. Like, if you bring in someone like FNS or really anybody into a team, like you've got to have some sort of collective idea about how soon do you expect some sort of success in this current context. Like, if I give you $100 and then I come back next week and I say, have you managed to increase it to $1 million? That's what I really want. Like, there's got to be some agreement about when does that $1 million come back into it. So I do feel like a lot of people are doing this now, where their expectations are just like, they're at least misaligned in some ways. They're not everybody, whether it be the org and the other 5 players or just within the team. People have like some sort of misalignment of what they think they should be getting out of this and how soon that success is going to be able to come. I don't know. I was actually really surprised with how well FNS was doing. I had kind of, I don't know. I wasn't sure what I was expecting exactly, but I wasn't expecting him to play good. So I don't know. I feel like there's something else going on here that I'm not aware of.
I rumored the pickup MBK or one of Apex, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard this as well.
Yeah, I don't know how that's gonna work, but that'll be interesting.
I guess maybe MBK wants the IGL on the international scene because maybe they can, learn how to have a good economy management. I don't know. But I feel like the issue with I think if you bring in MBK and Mixwell, I think when they brought in FNS, they had to replace Skadoodle and put in like either Ricky or JDM. That would have been a good team. But then they decided, Skadoodle went active for 14 days, and then he come back and he was like a god. And then for online for 2 weeks, and then he was a bot again on LAN. So I don't understand why they kept Skadoodle and thinking that, well, with Skadoodle and Rush underperforming, FNS was playing pretty well in clutches from what I've seen, and he wasn't bad fragging-wise on LAN. So I don't understand why this is all of a sudden FNS's fault, or he's like the reason why they don't just gel with his style, when obviously Skadoodle has been an inconsistent piece. And when you're an opera, that's like one of the big set pieces, right? So on CT sides, holding out a bomb site, or on T side, the op is very important in terms of like, you can't really get many kills with it sometimes. So I don't understand why they kept Skadoodle, knowing his issues and his consistency issues, over getting someone like Ricky's a free agent or JDM a free agent. I don't know. It just didn't make any sense to me. And I think you had to replace, if you're going to replace Stewie, you're going to have to replace Skadoodle as well, because his major performance was an overperformance, unfortunately for him and NA as a whole. But it's just sad because Cloud9 was top team in the world, or whatever you want to say, team for once, and then we just did the old NA and just ruined the whole team. So really kind of sad to see. But one thing that's not really sad to see is FaZe getting back Olofmeister, switching out one Swede for another. And I think that's really interesting because Olofmeister, he took a personal break. Hopefully he can be back to his godlike form again. He was pretty good in FaZe before. How do you feel about FaZe and their chances in future tournaments with Olofmeister now?
Yeah, I mean, if we were kind of talking about last week, like who's going to challenge Astralis, and I feel like if there's one team that's going to do it out of the current ones, I mean, FaZe with Olofmeister is a pretty good bet because they're a team with so much firepower that even a team like Astralis shouldn't be able to match in theory. So they have that edge on them that no one else has, really. So I definitely think it's a good move to at least try and bring him back for a while. I mean, they did have some issues still when he was in the lineup. We have to remember that. But I mean, they should at least give it a shot again because there's just this big upside to this lineup that we've seen, like when they first came together back in the fall.
I feel really conflicted about the whole FaZe project. Like, I think Olofmeister is an amazing player, and if the project doesn't work long term, then I can't see it being like anything to do with him specifically. Like, it has to be I want the project to work because it would be so cool to have like this all-star super team that just like goes on to win some a major tournament and just but at the same time, it's almost like you want Counter-Strike to be a slightly more complex game than that. Than that you could make one super team and like buy out all the best players and then you just kind of win, which I think is always what we've seen that you can't maybe do that. But I don't know. I think I'm super happy that Olofmeister is back, and I agree that they should definitely give it another try and maybe even a second and a third if it doesn't work after this. But yeah, I'm just happy to see him back in the lineup. I think it's been too long already.
Yeah, I can understand that. I think they'll be better with him. Even I think Exist wasn't bad, especially secondary caller. Maybe they actually needed a secondary caller in FaZe. Maybe that healed some issues, but I definitely think that Olofmeister is a big, of course, in terms of fragging boost. He was a pretty good like double op or however they used to work that sometimes on like overpass. But it'll be interesting to see how the team feels. Like they went from having Olofmeister, then they had Exist. They kind of plugged him in his spots, so to speak. And now they're going to take Exist out. Now they can put Olofmeister back in. It's a lot of plug-in and plugging out and plugging in and plugging out. And I wonder how that'll affect the team's mental, or they're like, there's some of their less tangible aspects of the team, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of talk about this concept of, as you said, the secondary caller and the sort of support structure of FaZe, I guess you could say. When you have all these superstars in there, then you're not necessarily gonna play a very structured style, which is something that when FaZe were towards the end of the Olofmeister lineup, the last time we were talking about, like, should they maybe try and get a more supportive player? Should they maybe try and play a little bit more of a tactical style, maybe? And I mean, that could be a potential solution that they're gonna look to down the line, because even with Exist, they didn't really change anything other than, plugging Exist into a lot of Olofmeister's roles. So, I mean, we're going to have to see if it works out, because if it doesn't, then maybe that's something they have to look at.
For sure. And
there's always the dream that if it doesn't work out, they try and pick up Simple to join them.
Or it all goes back to Fnatic.
Yeah, exactly. That's the real dream.
Oh no!
And I think that's too much.
No.
I can see it. I can see the Olaf the Fnatic thing in the future, but not the Simple thing.
What would your life even be like if you had to try and play a team that had Nico and Simple in the same line?
That'd be the biggest
even be
glitch in
fun.
Matrix. Oh man.
Game.
Oh, I mean, that means we would be in a simulation then. But
Yeah.
I mean, my dream would be Valde in this team instead of Olofmeister. See, that would.
Ooh, that's
he's
my boy right there.
I'm for anything that will rescue Valde. He's just so good.
I mean, you say rescue, but like I guess North. I mean, well, I guess
Rescue
y'all have a
mission.
biased opinion, but I guess North haven't been too bad. I mean, I don't think they'll ever be top 5 in the world, but I think they aren't necessarily awful anymore, right?
Yeah, because of Valde.
Yeah, carries them in games.
Yeah, Valde, you have you have AZ, the best Danish player, correct? Besides Device.
Listen,
No.
No,
can we not go there?
All right, I'm sorry. I had to do it
I
though.
get too tilted.
Oh,
I'll say this: North are playing better than they were, which is not saying a lot, but they are.
no. Well, I mean, talk about North, but they're one of the teams in Starladder, and so we're going to talk about some predictions going forward in terms of who we think the favorites are to win Starladder, some dark horses, and which 8 teams are going to go to the playoffs. And so far in Starladder, we haven't had too many interesting results. Tyloo have been kind of decent. They're 1-1. Bentet is the god as per usual. I think they're still missing Captain Mo because AE, call him After Effects. He hasn't really been that great. I don't know. He's been kind of up and down. And then you have performances like where you see Renegades completely, utterly, just bad. I mean, Sponge has to be crying right now. I don't know if he is or not, but it's just sad to see like Renegades go from like IEM, where they're looking so good, to being so bad. I don't know what went on. I guess the coach is a big deal, but it's really bad form. But who do we think is everyone's favorites to win the event?
Team Liquid.
Yeah, I think Team Liquid is kind of the big one because they only got stopped by Astralis at the last tournament, so you're kind of looking towards them. I mean, other than that, you're looking at Mousesports, of course. They won the last Star Series, and they're a really good team. You're also, I think the last team that I would put in the favorites category is Navi, even though they lost to Tyloo and they won. But I mean, when you have Simple playing like that and you have Electronic helping him, you're gonna be the favorite to win a tournament no matter what, or at least one of the favorites.
The thing to note about Team Liquid is they need to fix the Mirage looked really shaky today. I don't know what's going on with that because they beat Astralis at Pro League and then they lose Godsent today. But that was Godsent's kind of pocket pick. So
I've been mesmerized by Simple as well. I've got Navi up there. I can't 100% defend it, but just a little bit. And in terms of Sponge, I mean, his life is perpetually miserable. So I'm not even sure this Renegade stuff even is registering at this point. But
He seemed pretty numb on the desk, so I was like, uh-oh. But we talk about, I guess, dark horses. For me, for favorites, of course, I say Liquid. I was an NA fanboy with a Liquid flag behind me. But I think Liquid are looking really good. Even though they had a kind of a scare against Godsent on Mirage, other than that, they've been really good. Their map pool is pretty deep, so I think they should be able to win the event. But I think number 2 would probably be Mouse, then Navi, and then SK. But I mean, other than that, it's it's like a tier 1, you have the tier 2, and then everybody else. But in terms of dark horses, I have to say probably Hellraisers, right? Because they've been pretty good on LAN. They have some good pieces. Angels are really smart. IGL. I think it was Mist who was marveling at the smoke he threw from Underpass to Jungle. I believe.
Yeah, I think that was insane.
Yeah, that's why I believe. Yeah, you didn't clip it, unfortunately, but it sounds pretty insane though. But he's a really smart guy.
Angel's been wildly underrated for like 5 years at least. I'm not even kidding. It's been so long. He's flown under the radar for some odd reason.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's sad that he has such a big buyout that you can't really buy him out from Hellraisers unless you have like buku money. And teams like Navi have a reputation being stingy. So, I mean, I would love to see him in place of Zeus, but that's just a boy can dream. A boy can dream. But who's everyone else's dark horses to potentially win or place top 4?
I mean, my dark horse for this event, you know where I'm gonna go. I'm gonna say North.
Oh, let's go.
That's crazy as that sounds. I gotta have some Danish representation in here, okay? So, I think North. I think one of the upsides that we've just talked about is Valde, who I personally think he is I would say the 3rd best player at this event. I think he's really underrated by a lot of people at the moment, and like when you have a star like that alone is gonna give you a boost. So I think they could definitely I'm not saying they're gonna win the tournament, okay? I think that maybe they can reach the semifinals if they get a good opponent in the quarterfinals, because they're just like a solid team that when they play at their optimal level, they should beat like everyone below them, and then like get the odd upset here and there. So I think the Dark Horse is going to depend a lot on who avoids drawing Team Liquid and like Navi in the quarterfinals. But I mean, yeah, I'll go with North. That'll be my pick.
I'll agree with you, Jamaica, about the Hell Races for like top 4. That would my Dark Horse for like semis and stuff, but like for top 8, I have to go Godsend. I have to. I just really like their play style. Like watching them, like you have Twist. Twist is inconsistent, like, and his attitude and stuff. Like he's been like performing pretty decent recently, and like Brolin, he's 15, first like huge big land. He's like one of their entry, I think. So if he gets like nerve shattered off, I think he can be a good piece for this team. He already is, but I see them having a good chance of making top 8. They play a Vanguard tomorrow, which I think they should be able to take. So things are looking good.
I don't even know. I think, I mean, this whole tournament is just a little bit confusing to me, but I would say anyone who is Navi or Liquid or Mouse up, like, I'd be surprised if any of them, like, obviously some of them have to make it to the semifinals, but I just have this feeling that, like, it's all so much a disarray for me. I don't have, like, a very clear picture in my mind about which of the rest are, currently in a great form to be able to do it. Like, I mean, if I just look at the names on the paper on North, I agree. Like they've got the things they need, like they do, and they have MSL who's got all this experience now. Like there's I can't think of a good reason except that they're not doing it. So like I feel like that with a bunch of teams right now. When I look at the lineup of people on Gambit, I have like a similar kind of feeling. Even if we ignore the in-game leader stuff that we talked about earlier, like I still think like, yeah, they could do much better than they currently are. So I don't know. I feel I don't have a very good answer to the Dark Horse question. Just anyone who is in those 3 teams.
That's fair. It's funny. I think it was Mike who mentioned that Valdi was the top 3 player at this event, but according to HLTV rankings, the top players as follow: Simple, Naf, Snatchy, Hampus, Oscar, Sunny, Colzera, and Forest. And on there,
This is a really good fragging by GL.
Yeah. Ampus has a 1.44 rating on 5 maps, and top one is Simple, of course, 1.52 across 4 maps. And NAF is second with 1.51 across 5 maps. And Team Liquid is the number 1 rated team, followed by Navi, Mouse Sports, and then Ego. So it's pretty interesting.
I meant top 3, as in like over the course of 2018.
Okay, wow, that's even wow. I mean, Dana CS is a hell of a drug, isn't it? Wow.
No, top 3 of the teams that are here, I obviously don't like include like.
Okay.
Okay.
And whatnot.
Okay. All right, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, you still have Simple in that group, Naf in that group, Sunny. I mean, I'm kind of reaching here, I guess, at the end, but yeah, that's fair. But I guess it's interesting because he's a support player traditionally. I've always loved Valdi, you know that. I think he's has really level head. He has a very smart, cool, casual playing style, and he's a really good fragger, of course. So I think he's a great fit for North. It's just a shame that Mertz has been a big letdown compared to his, of course, academy form, which is a shame because I thought he had a lot of promise and potential, but I guess that remains to be seen.
I guess those are like the LAN nerves that are setting in now. Like the feeling of playing in like a serious lineup and against really big opponents. I think he'll outgrow it. Like I think that this is going to be a temporary stage. A lot of players go through it. I think if the rest of the team can just like help him, then it'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can understand that. So if everyone, we pretty much had our top 8 at this point, so we'll kind of skip that part. But we did have some questions. We took them from the wonderful, wonderful audience here on the podcast. And one of the questions was, what tournament organizer, Anders, do you feel should get a shot at the major that has already hosted one? And which one that you think should return?
I give you a really biased answer and say Blast Pro.
Oh, wow.
Figured.
It's shocking, isn't it?
It should be Copenhagen, right?
Exactly. How could you possibly have guessed? I think so far E-League they're not even close to being touched in terms of organizing the majors and running it. There's some things I would like to upgrade. I think it would be fun to have like a little bit more talent representation at E-League of like you, and I think it would be fun if even if the minors and stuff like that were like a little bit better covered. But I still think they do like overall the best job. Turner at the moment. I'd go so far as to say I would be devastated if PGL didn't get another chance. I think PGL were. Their major was kind of overshadowed by the fact that there were some technical and like some venue issues that was sort of more or less out of their control. And I have an enormous amount of respect for them as a company. I think they're very, very, very good at what they do. And I think there's an unfortunate shift that's happening right now in the production company world, which is that PGL are sort of being pushed more into doing Dota 2 events because there's more room for them to do stuff in Dota 2, and there's less room for them to do anything in Counter-Strike because the calendar year is so full. So I think it'd be an unbelievable loss for Counter-Strike if PGL swapped too much out of Counter-Strike and too much into Dota. That's my opinion.
How'd you find MLG's major when they hosted one?
So yeah, that was incredible. But obviously that happened like right after Blizzard Activision had bought that whole thing, right? So a lot of people were wondering whether they would even be allowed to do one in the future, because I mean that from Valve's point of view, that could be a little bit tricky, right? I've never actually got confirmation about whether or not that would be like a conflict of interest that would make Valve say no, or maybe Blizzard Activision wouldn't want to do it because they've got their own FPS games and out there somewhere. So I'm not sure, but yes, the people at MLG I get along with super well. So it's a real shame that they haven't been able to host one. I don't know if they won't or they can't, or if there's some other legal problem going on, but that'd be super interesting to me. You're right.
Yeah, I think so. I think MLG did a great job, I thought, with the major. I thought it was one of the more exciting ones in North America. So, but there's a lot of good tournament organizers out there, right? Like there's like Gfinity or some great names. Not a biased opinion, of course, in Gfinity, but I mean, but there are definitely some great names that have hosted ones in the past, or I guess now E-League has been pretty good. I just feel like their production kind of feels similar at this point, so it doesn't feel special. Like I felt Atlanta was a really special event. But the most Boston didn't, other than NA, of course, winning, it didn't feel, in terms of, it didn't feel that exciting compared to like Atlanta. But another question we had was,
wait, can you try and is there any? I'm really interested in all this stuff, obviously.
Right.
Is there any way to like elaborate on that? Like, I mean, I for some reason I do kind of feel like the hype that was there for Atlanta was kind of nuts. And obviously, I remember it from casting the finals, which is really, really overwhelming. But I'm not 100% sure. But I think if I had to if someone woke me up at 4 a.m. and asked like, which had the most emotional like crowd, I'd probably have to say Atlanta over Boston. But I'm not 100% sure why.
I just feel like Atlanta had a better crowd in terms of like it wasn't biased towards just NA, and that was really annoying kind of with the Cloud9 because it was just pure Cloud9 fans. Of course, you had like some FaZe fans in the crowd, but like it was obviously pretty biased, and so it wasn't like where you had Astralis and VP. Those chants were awesome. I love those. Or even the Arby's chant was hilarious. Oh, I have that Twitch clip still. But I mean, plus that was like one of the first majors I watched really, besides like Cologne 2016. So I thought, of course, for me, it was really special. And I just thought, I don't know, I felt like Boston, it didn't have like the production value was like, it was good, but it just felt like any other E-League event. It didn't have anything specially special. So it didn't have anything that stood on its own, in my opinion, at least. One
thing I'll say as well is the Atlanta one was kind of like the first time where we had a super long gap in between the majors. So if you remember previously, we always had 3 majors a year, and then like from Cologne 2016 to Atlanta, there was a really long time in between. And then it was right after the break as well. So there was all this hype around this tournament because we hadn't seen a big one in a long time. So I think that helped a lot as well.
Yeah, that's probably a really good point. I mean, there's this, so obviously really quickly leads us back to the discussion around the general saturation of the scene. I mean, one thing is having majors too close to each other, but the other problem is obviously the fact that there's an enormous, like an ocean of online Counter-Strike that's being played at, any time, given day or night. You can just tune in and there's going to be some online Counter-Strike going on. Like that to me is starting to become a real problem as well. That I can't. I'm having continuously a harder time overlooking it. Like I'm trying to ignore it, but I can't.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I mean, I had a rant about oversaturation a few weeks ago. That's not. So, my thing on oversaturation is when you have people that are like journalists or casters or whatever they are, and you guys kind of, and us as well, we kind of have to watch everything because we want to like be on top of who's the good team and who should we write about next and who should we should watch these upcoming team as well. But if you're just an average fan, you can pick to just watch NIP or watch Navi or pick out your favorite teams. I think people have this kind of perspective where they have to watch everything, and I just don't think that's true. I think you can pick your favorite organizers or pick your favorite teams or pick just to watch the finals or whatever. But like if you're a caster, you obviously don't have that luxury, so you kind of get that oversaturation perspective, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but I mean, it's even worse than that. Like those of us who are working on the casting side, we can't even do that. Like it's just not physically possible. Most of us spend too much time in hotel rooms where the internet isn't good enough, or we are in airports, or we are traveling to or from an airport, or like I can guarantee you, there's nobody who's working at like the higher levels of the Counter-Strike circuit that can currently keep up with everything that's going on. Maybe it's a bit easier for some of the people who are doing, let's say, Pro League, and so they that they're working on those games. But I mean, even if you think about Pro League as a situation, just isolated, if you're the European casting team that shows up at 5 p.m. to do the European Pro League, when you're off at midnight, you're not going home to stay up and watch the American broadcast, right? that would be fully mental. So instead, you just have to say, like, you just have to sort of summarize the results maybe the day later and hope that if somebody did something truly incredible. I actually have this fear a lot. Like I sometimes worry about this going into a match, that because this wasn't the case in like 13 and 14. Like that at that point, I could still kind of keep up with what was going on. But I sometimes worry now that if I go into a match and let's say somebody does some trick that a good portion of the internet saw the day before, but I didn't for whatever reason because I was at an airport or something, So and maybe nobody told me. I'd be scared at this point that I would react to it in a way. I mean, maybe this is just a caster thing, but I'd be a little bit scared that I would react to it in a way that would reveal that, oh, he's not actually watching the game. Or it's just like I am trying, but it's just not possible,
Yeah, I will say that you even if you try to watch everything, I mean, it's impossible. Like I honestly can't remember the last time that I have watched online Counter-Strike, like on a regular basis. I watch the game here and there, but like I don't watch like every Pro League game or every ECS game. I mean, that's impossible for anyone.
Well, doesn't it also? I mean, it is also a little bit shocking that even if you did, then the results from those places wouldn't give you any kind of good picture about what you would see in the upcoming big LAN tournament. Like I mean, that's a problem.
For
yeah,
sure.
Because with Astralis as well, we saw this trend online where they were like, undefeated in however many matches, but like a lot of people didn't see coming in, including myself, to that first event after that streak that, oh, Astralis are actually gonna just destroy everyone, because they've been doing that online as well. I know that's not always like exactly correlated, but in that case, it definitely was, and I don't think a lot of people saw that coming.
Like energy.
Yeah.
The biggest disappointment in a Counter-Strike since forever. I mean, this is depressing how they were so good online. And then, like I said, Cirque is not going to be good on LAN. And guess what? He's a big-time onliner. I mean, Ethan's been pretty good consistently. Everyone else either has a good performance or a bad performance. There's no consistency to the team whatsoever. I think FNS should go to energy, replace Daps, and then you'd have a good team. But that's just my opinion on that team.
I have another thing. Anders, how would you feel about like a sort of like a studio thing, like League or like Overwatch does for like Pro League or something, like split the year, like half the year for like League in a studio in like LA or something like in Europe, and then the other half of the year would be no leagues, but like other organizers hosting like tournaments and stuff like that.
I'm not sure. If I had to, I've asked myself this question really a lot. Like, what is the what is the best version of Counter-Strike possible? And for me, it's definitely the kind that is played on a stage with a big crowd. And it doesn't have to be 10,000 people. I think people misunderstand how much that matters. Like, there are a lot of other things that go into building an atmosphere inside of an arena, but, you know, a reasonably sized crowd, and then, you know, players playing on a stage. For me, that's like that's the best that you can experience in Counter-Strike. And I think that version of the Counter-Strike product is so good that you don't have to do a lot of convincing, even to people who aren't regular viewers. They know it when they see it. They definitely feel it. They can, like, it transfers so well into people's, you know, mind that they know they just saw something that was interesting that they might want to watch more of, and I think that's enough. So I want as much of that as we can get. I think that's the best way that I can phrase, like, I know it's not like a direct answer, but like that's the best that I can do in terms of saying I want more of that. But obviously, if it was every single weekend, like, it's hard to imagine you could fill a stadium of, you know, or like fill an arena of like 3,000 or 4,000 people every single weekend. Maybe that can't be the goal, but I wish we had more of that and less of the other stuff.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I get your point there.
I agree with that. Another question we had was, if you were to build a Swedish super team, what 5 players with no limits would you put on it? It's directed for Anders, of course.
God.
Yeah.
A Swedish super team with 5 players, just no limit. Does that mean like no budget limit, or
No budget limit. No beef history. No, it doesn't matter. Anybody who you think would be the best 5 Swedish players right now.
I mean, while I think about it, I can jump in and then give it some time.
All
So, 100%, you should have Crims on this team. That's no question about that. And personally, I would have Golden as the in-game leader because I think he's done a really good job with Fnatic, at least as far as, you know, getting them results. So, I think those 2 definitely would be my first 2 kind of cornerstones of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in terms of the AWPer, I think you have to be looking towards Draken still.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he's a bit up and down, I think he's still the best Swedish AWPer.
Wow.
So I would put him in there.
Degrees.
And then I think Dennis is a super good player. I think he is a very versatile player that you can put in sort of every spot that you want him to. So I would put him in there. And then for the last spot, that one is kind of difficult, actually.
Maybe Rez. I don't really know.
Yeah, maybe Rest, or maybe Brolan, or maybe Lecro. One of those 3 would kind of be my thing. But yeah.
All right, that's fair.
Oh man, I actually almost on principle dislike these type of questions because they do force you to forget about what you know about people individually. So you have to sort of ignore all the personality problems, which kind of like defeats the purpose of doing it. But I guess it would be hard not to pick someone like Crims. I can't overlook Olofmeister either. So yeah, Crims, Olofmeister, Dennis, probably 2. I'd probably have Forrest in there, but then you get to the in-game leader problem. I actually, can we just respect the fact that Golden is like one of the only people in the Swedish scene right now that actually looks like he maybe wants to in-game lead? Like that's pretty cool. Like, that doesn't happen all that often. People should be carrying around, like, you know, I'm on a throne or something at this point, just saying, like, please bring leadership to the Swedish scene because they need it. So yeah, that might be a good pick.
But he's not even an in-game leader right now, which is the worst part.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit mental.
All right, and then we had one more question. Well, it's kind of a 2-part one. And the question was, obviously you've cast a lot of events, Anders, but what is the most memorable one and why? And if one event you casted that left a negative impression on you?
I think the final there with VP and Astralis in Atlanta that's really, really high up on my list. That was a really special moment, really kind of crazy. I had an enormous amount of fun casting Blast Runner. I'm not just saying that because I helped to organize it, but I was really shocked by how much of the audience were engaged. Like I obviously expected that there would be like people there rooting for Astralis and stuff, but the energy inside of the arena was really crazy. And like I've had so many people come up to me afterwards and tell me that they had a really good time there and everything. So that was kind of special. Maybe it was also like, I mean, I obviously can't disconnect my own involvement in it completely from the emotion of being there, because it's so stressful helping to organize something like this, like more than I could have ever imagined. Like I developed a different respect for people who do this the whole year round. It's definitely crazy. I have had one experience where I was really, really, really like shocked. And that was back in the Olive Boost incident on Overpass. And Semler and I were casting that game, and I was loving it. I mean, I still think it's genius. It's obviously abusive, and it was obviously going to get removed from the game the very next day. But I still think it's genius. I don't know what to say. Like I can't really bring myself to say that they shouldn't have done it, or that they would like it. I think a lot of teams would have done the same thing. I just think there's just like the ultimate collapse of all of the worst things that could have happened with like that Devil Walk interview afterwards, and just the general fact that nobody seemed to like them even going into it because they didn't shake hands with Nips back in 2006 or something. It's like just all the bad things that could have been put into like one event was that. And I was loving it. I was laughing. I mean, if you go back and listen to the VOD, like Sam and I was just laughing at the whole situation. It's just all around good time. And then I take off my headset, stand up from my chair, and it's like that was absolutely crazy. And then I turn around and I can see people like shuffling about down on the floor, because we were like a little bit off on like some scaffolding, and people just shuffling around completely crazy. And I walk down, and like the admins are running back and forth, and somebody says to me like, "Yeah, wow, this is a huge deal right now." And I was like, "What do you? I mean, what?" And then and I still wasn't really sure. And then I picked up my phone and looked at my Twitter account, and I had so many messages with people saying like, "You should absolutely kill yourself. I never want to hear you commentate a game ever again. Why are you laughing at this? Why are you cheering on these disgraceful players?" And I just remember like that feeling that people say they have when like the blood drains from their face. That's what I felt like. I was like, oh my God, like what have I done something like? And I felt like that for a while. I was like, did I have some sort of responsibility in this case to like do things that? And now I don't really think that I did, but like that was a shocking moment for me. Like truly, I was like, oh my God, like that was like the internet mob thing happening, and I can only imagine what the Fnatic players must have felt. I honestly, I don't think many Counter-Strike players will ever be able to put themselves in that position. I mean, what I've got was like, it lasted for 10 minutes, and then nobody gave a fuck about me anymore, which is great. I like that part. But there was something there that was like, that was really short. That must have been very difficult for them.
A crazy thing to think about that is, what do you think would have happened if it had been either the other way around, or if it had been a team like NIP or Virtus Pro that had done it?
Oh, if it had been NIP, no one would have even cared. Like, I mean, I can't obviously know that, but that is my feeling that it would have been different. I think it was unfortunately the history of the team and the fact that the internet is a silly place that made it happen.
For sure. Well, thank you for that's really strange. I can't believe that people actually give you hate for that. I mean, you didn't actually have a part in it, so I don't understand why people would complain about the Olaf boost. That was a great episode of greatest moments in CS history. That was really insane. But I think that was probably one of the cooler moments, and yet somehow it was also one of the more infamous moments. So, it's really, I just can't believe people just say like, such mean stuff like that. But internet is a great place, like you said.
I mean, it was obviously an emotional moment for a bunch of people, right? But it was it did get out of control really quickly. It was I didn't mind the tournament overall, but like that one moment where I checked my phone, that was definitely one of the ones where I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
What made it crazy as well was that LDLC did a similar boost that everyone just kind of looked past because it wasn't as effective.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, I don't know. Like it was maybe it'll be one of those cases that we study in 10 years to figure out how we should do esports legislation and like tournament rules and stuff like that. But it was certainly there were a lot of things. Like, I mean, another thing is, if it was directly illegal, then why didn't the admin stop the match and say, this can't go on? Like there are a lot of things that were weird about the whole situation.
Oh, for sure. All right. Well, it's been a great podcast. Thank you for Anders for coming on the podcast. You can obviously, if you don't know who Anders is, I mean, that's pretty surprising, but you can see him as we'll be casting the rest of Starladder Series 5, Season 5, and you can also see his work on whether it's YouTube or Twitch channel. And of course, you can follow his Twitter. There's a lot of great things, even if there's some memes about our life being a simulation, but that's the best part, right?
Memes.
Oh, okay. Well. We have the truth teller himself then. Thank you so much for coming on, and thanks to everyone for listening. This has been Jamaican with Mist, Mygans, and Anders on the Real Sports CSGO podcast.